Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight. Welcome back, said Joe Biden, who met with Donald Trump in the White House. In the meantime, the president-elect is preparing his new cabinet. We already know who the new U.S. Secretary of Defense and State will be. Europe is closely watching the changes at the American top. More on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. First Poland, now Latvia. NATO chief visits eastern flank and emphasizes that Ukraine must win. The European Union wants to deal with Russia's shadow tanker fleet. It's a new civilization disease. Today is World Diabetes Day. The newest set of appointments for Donald Trump's incoming cabinet has been revealed, and with it, questions have arisen about U.S. foreign policy. With names such as Hegseth, Rubio, or Waltz being assigned the top positions, the future of aid to Kiev could be in jeopardy. Grzegorz Płaza has more.
Preparations for Donald Trump's incoming term are already well underway.
Donald, congratulations.
U.S. President Joe Biden, hosting the winner of the recent presidential election in the White House, emphasized the importance of continuing to provide Ukraine with financial and military aid.
President Biden reinforced his view that the United States standing with Ukraine on an ongoing basis is in our national security interest.
The announced picks for Donald Trump's cabinet, however, are not all known for their staunch support of Kiev. For instance, Trump's unorthodox choice for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, a Washington outsider without any prior background in government, is an infantry veteran and Fox News television host, known for his skepticism towards Ukraine and NATO.
Why should America, the European emergency contact number for the past century, listen to self-righteous and impotent nations asking us to honor outdated and one-sided defense agreements they no longer live up to?
While Hegseth is an outsider, not every nominee is.
Thank you.
Marco Rubio, who ran against Trump during the 2016 Republican primaries, has been tapped as the new Secretary of State. The post of the National Security Advisor has been reserved in turn for Mike Waltz, a Florida representative. According to experts, the pair's selection is a good sign for Ukraine.
I think it's encouraging. I think there's a path forward there. I think also we could be seeing the formulation of Trump's maximum pressure campaign that he did against Iran taking root elsewhere in the world, including in Eastern Europe.
Rubio has strongly condemned Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and co-authored a sanctions law concerning pro-Russian separatists. However, he has also spoken firmly against funding an endless war.
You don't have to be a fan of Vladimir Putin to want the war to end. We are funding a stalemate that's costing lives, and Ukraine is going to take 100 years to rebuild with everything they're facing.
Not everything is up to Donald Trump himself.
We need to wait because there is a difference between Trump, trying to win votes in the United States prior to the election and Trump actually being in power. And we should also consider the influence of other people who may not even necessarily be part of the administration, but they still can wield some significant influence over Trump.
John Thune, a supporter of aid for Ukraine, is set to become the U.S. Senate's newest Republican leader, sparking hopes of reaching a compromise with the newest administration. With a lack of a unified position towards Ukraine within the Republican Party, Kiev's future remains uncertain.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has concluded his international tour in Latvia, observing NATO exercises dubbed Resolute Warrior. His visits were aimed at shoring up support to Ukraine and promoting defense spending among NATO allies. Amid fears that Trump's administration could end aid to the war-torn country, the New York Times suggests Kyiv could be contemplating building nuclear weapons. Jeremy Hołodniuk reports.
This is ground zero for the first training of the Canadian-led NATO multinational brigade in Latvia. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte was in attendance observing the final day of a 2-week-long exercise. His presence was part of a series of international visits following his nomination as Secretary General. The reason? To shore up support for Ukraine.
Our support for Ukraine is the right thing to do, to help them prevail as an independent and sovereign nation. It is also the right thing to do for our own security.
Rutte's goal was to motivate NATO allies to devote more money towards defense.
has been routing through European capitals since a couple of weeks. He's been to Berlin, for example, and to Italy. And of course, he is talking to allies and saying that they should spend more on defense.
Rutte's trip comes amid worries that when Trump takes up the presidency in January, he could end US aid to Kiev and push the country to negotiating with Russia. While in Brussels, outgoing US Secretary of State Antony Blinken vowed to do as much as possible while his administration was still in power.
President Biden is committed to making sure that every dollar we have at our disposal will be pushed out the door between now and January 20th.
But with a possible specter of US aid to Kyiv disappearing, Ukraine is contemplating all options, at least according to the New York Times. The newspaper reported that a recent briefing paper from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense stated that the country contemplated developing of a nuclear bomb. Accusation Kyiv strongly denies.
Ukraine is committed to the NPT. We do not possess, develop or intend to acquire nuclear weapons.
The alleged paper suggests Kyiv could use spent fuel rods taken from Ukraine's 9 operating nuclear reactors and create a bomb. But this scenario raises doubts.
Is it technically feasible? Yes, but it is extremely difficult to actually do so in practice because that plutonium is part of spent fuel. Ukraine does not have reprocessing facilities. It most certainly cannot be done in a few months.
Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine inherited the world's third largest nuclear arsenal, but chose to give up these weapons in return for recognition of territorial integrity and sovereignty. A decision that seems to have failed.
How could one trust this document, and how could one trust the partners that signed it and guaranteed our territorial integrity and sovereignty?
While Kyiv developing a nuclear arsenal might not seem probable, Ukraine is still left with a lot of uncertainty regarding US aid and Russia making gains on the front lines.
Polish President Andrzej Duda has said Poland can deliver its remaining MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine, but there is a catch. The Polish head of state has given a condition that NATO would first need to secure Poland's skies. What exactly does that mean, and why are these post-Soviet fighter jets desired by Kyiv? Kazimierz Wysiak reports.
They may be old, but that makes them even better for Kyiv. Ukrainian pilots are much more familiar with the post-Soviet weaponry than state-of-the-art F-16s.
They still have a lot of capabilities in maintenance, adaptability, weapon systems use, and understanding of the MiG-29. So therefore, if they got some operational Polish MiG-29s, that would bolster their capabilities.
Poland has 14 of these machines left in stock. The only problem is they're still patrolling the Polish skies. That's one of the reasons Polish President Andrzej Duda is not keen on parting with them.
If we were to donate them to Ukraine, one fundamental condition would need to be met. The Polish sky has to be secured. NATO would therefore need to provide us with that security by transferring fighter jets from other NATO states to patrol our skies.
The Polish government is so far refusing to comment on the president's proposal. Experts, on the other hand, say it's too soon to tell whether this idea will take with other NATO members.
It's not just, snap, we say it's a good idea, and then we have a gap because it all matters. Russia is kind of threatening other countries, and it all is part of the whole. So I think the willingness, the positive thinking is there, but it just needs to be properly coordinated.
According to President Duda's chancellery, Poland has spent the most on supporting Ukraine when it comes to GDP, including aid for refugees. Other graphics published on the Chancellery website show substantial military aid delivered to Kyiv by Warsaw since 2022, compared to other nations. This includes 14 Leopard 2 tanks, 60 PT-91 tanks, 280 T-72 tanks, 250 BWP armored carriers, and 14 MiG-29s. Poland has donated the most MiG fighter jets out of all NATO allies. According to one expert, only a single country could provide Poland with enough air security at this stage to enable further MiG deliveries.
This is a very difficult time for NATO members, and we need to accept that only US can right now provide enough air power to replace potential transfer of Polish MiG fighters.
Warsaw is currently waiting for the arrival of some of the most advanced aircraft in the world, American F-35s and Korean Fa-50s, but they won't be here earlier than late next year. Ukraine, in the meantime, is struggling on the eastern front line. Even though they're old, additional MiG-29s would be a welcome sight for Ukrainian defenders.
The European Parliament has adopted regulations that would enable more strict and targeted sanctions against Russia's so-called shadow fleet of oil tankers. The fleet has been a key financial lifeline for Russia's war effort, dodging sanctions on Russian energy exports. Franciszek Pilis has more.
A fleet of old and rusty tankers might seem unassuming at first. Upon closer inspection, however, one comes to find out this fleet is far from useless. Despite a plethora of international sanctions, these ships continue to haul Russian energy products, namely oil, across seas to the farthest corners of the earth. Running the Russian war engine doesn't come cheap, especially given the prolonged nature of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. By making the ships uninsured and obscuring their ownership, as well as the origin of its cargo, Russia continues to export its oil abroad, safe from the gaze of meddlesome sanctions officers.
Through these shadow flats, Russia has a lot of money. Also, we have to stop it because this is the part of the financing of Russia aggression in Ukraine.
This is exactly why the European Parliament wants to target this Russian shadow fleet in future sanctions packages. A recent resolution adopted by the European Parliament calls for the sanctioning of all individual ships, their owners, operators, managers, accounts, banks and insurance companies, as well as sanctioning all uninsured vessels sailing through EU waters.
Now is the time to really show that Europe has its power and can ban all these shadow fleets and shadow fleets techniques. This is not only by oil, but this is by many components what Russia is selling through the third country to the European Union.
The European Parliament has also called on all EU member states to end importing all Russian fossil fuels, including liquefied natural gas. According to reports from S&P Global Commodity Insights, as of late October, around 68% of Russia's 2024 LNG exports went to Europe, which is something EU officials want to change.
We still get a lot of LNG via Russia, from Russia. And why not replace it by American LNG, which is cheaper for us and brings down our energy prices?
Funding Moscow's war effort isn't the only negative stemming from the operations of Russia's shadow fleet. The poor state of the ships carrying hundreds of barrels of oil are prime conditions for a catastrophic oil spill, and environmental organizations have taken notice.
So what is really dangerous is that this freighter is 21 years old and obviously in poor condition. Often these tankers are also poorly insured, so that if something happens, then ultimately we all have to pay for it because the insurance doesn't cover it.
While the measures against Russia's shadow fleet were already adopted, we will not see them implemented until the next sanctions package is unveiled by the EU.
Slovakia's culture minister Martina Šimkovičová of the far-right pro-Russian SNS party has fired the management of cultural institutions. Now she wants to prohibit minority languages on public transport and in places such as post offices. Our reporter Karolina Szapland reports from Bratislava.
On Wednesday, Slovak Minister of Culture Martina Šimkovičová has suggested a new amendment to an already very strict Slovak language law. Now, this amendment will mean that on public advertisements, offices, even restaurant menu, Slovak language will have to be included first. For anybody not obeying these new rules, there is a potential fine of up to 15,000 euros. Now, our expert, Mr. Vladimir Bilčík, has an explainer to tell us what he feels is really behind this proposal. Let's take a look.
If we cannot build something meaningful, let's try to poke at something which can stir further trouble, discussion. I think it's a good political sideline for somebody like Prime Minister Fico in terms of, stirring the national sentiment in the country among parts of especially his electorate. But I feel that it also shows the real emptiness of the agenda of the Ministry of Culture, which cannot come up with anything productive.
Whether this new amendment will be voted in, time will tell. It's still very hard to say. Is it, as our expert says, a diversion tactic, or is it really a tool aimed at the Hungarian minority? Time will tell. But for now, Slovak culture war seems to be again in full swing. For TVP World, I'm Karolina Shapland, here in Bratislava.
Every year on November 14th, countries around the world mark Diabetes Day, highlighting the effects of a disease that is often referred to as a civilizational disease. This day serves as an opportunity to raise awareness about the impact of diabetes on people's health and to emphasize the importance of strengthening diabetes prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. Anastasia Yanchenko has more.
Previously, a diagnosis of diabetes meant inevitable death, as those afflicted were unable to absorb glucose due to a lack of the hormone insulin. However, in 1922, Canadian scientist Sir Frederick Banting saved a 14-year-old boy by using insulin for the first time. After several injections, the boy's health improved significantly, and he returned to normal life. As of today, according to the International Diabetes Federation, approximately 537 million people worldwide suffer from the disease. It has become a civilizational affliction. By 2030, the number of patients could reach 643 million.
At the moment, we know that 3.5 million people in Poland have diabetes, and about 1 million are unaware they have it. The forecasts are drastic, and we expect a significant increase, mainly in type 2 diabetes due to the obesity epidemic.
The data from the National Health Fund, or NFZ, shows that in Poland, 2.49 million adults had diabetes in 2013, compared to 3.24 million adults in 2023. Over the course of 11 years, the prevalence of the disease has increased by approximately 750,000 people, or about 30%.
Diabetes is a highly demanding disease because it requires constant attention. It cannot be forgotten for even a moment. It stays with us 24 hours a day, every day of our lives.
Diabetes is especially dangerous due to the speed at which it develops. It is vital that people reassess their approach to their health, as this can help prevent the onset of the disease.
A healthy, balanced diet, minimally processed food, exercise, stress reduction, or finding ways to cope with stress.
The goal of World Diabetes Day is to raise awareness about its symptoms, its potential complications, and the importance of regular medical checkups and prevention. Experts emphasize the need for support, education, and raising awareness among patients as steps towards defeating this disease.
As Europe faces unprecedented challenges to democracy, the rule of law, and external threats like Russian interference, few have defended these values as steadfastly as Vera Jourova, Vice President of the European Commission. In an exclusive interview with TVP World, our European affairs correspondent sits down with Vice President Jourova to discuss Europe's battle to protect its democratic integrity and uphold justice across the Union.
As Vice President for Values and Transparency, Vera Jourova has made the rule of law a cornerstone of her work, championing democratic resilience across Europe. Today, as Russian interference has intensified in elections from the EU to Moldova and Georgia, and with disinformation increasingly undermining public trust, her work and legacy is more vital than ever. Now, the EU faces profound challenges, including cyber threats, how to deal with AI, and now all heightened by the return of Donald Trump to the White House. Vice President Jourova joins us to discuss these issues and the future of European democracy. Thank you so much, Vice President, for giving us your time today.
Thank you for your interest.
I want to jump right into rule of law. This is something that has been very important to you and your work here at the Commission over these last years. And I'll just jump and ask. We look at things, the toolbox that we already have. We look at Hungary, Slovakia, Poland with Article 7, with infringement procedures. Is this toolbox that we have right now in the European Union, is that enough for future infractions or dangers?
Well, the toolbox is richer now. I came to the Commission in 2014 and we didn't have the rule of law report, which is, I think, very efficient preventive measure and tool. We didn't have conditionality. It means the connection between money and rule of law. So this is the maximum we could have achieved. It's now a question whether the new Commission will propose new things. I predict that there will be the effort to connect also the single market and rule of law to explain that for good business, for the entrepreneurs, it's important to have the legal certainty and the guaranteed principle that everybody is equal before the law. So I think that there will be more things coming, but I'm quite satisfied that we came with the measures which achieved some good results.
Speaking also of results, I mean, it's an ongoing battle with big tech. That was one of the main things here, continues to be. Also, very much you are connected with GDPR, very much guaranteeing rights, digital rights for citizens in Europe and beyond that. But can we make tech trustworthy? And what are your concerns now with things like disinformation? Big tech is still very much part of our lives. What do you look at in terms of your achievements, and what are you worried about for the future?
Of course, big tech is influencing every inch of our lives. And we started with GDPR by setting up very strong principle that we have to defend the rights of every individual. And you know, you and me, everybody is sharing private data with the technological or with the digital sphere, and we guarantee protection as the only continent, in fact. And the GDPR is being followed in efforts of legislators on many other places. But I also felt responsible for security of people. And I don't understand why the people should be targets of attacks being sent to, to gas chambers again, verbally, and being beaten, being killed, because the online violence has a very, very bad feature that it is spilling over to the real life, real aggression against real people. So I think that we still have to work further, because online is not a jungle. It's not just the free ride for the criminals.
You spoke also of attacks in real time. Obviously, what happens in social media matters. It's been very much also used by certain actors, including Russia and the Kremlin, in various countries, including the European Union, also what we've seen in Moldova and Georgia. Looking at your experience, these threats have increased, this interference has increased. Is Europe doing enough, and what could we do more in future?
We need to protect democracy, including democratic elections. Without that, we can close the shop. Sorry to be that blunt. And so we did everything to protect European elections against 3 new kinds of threats: increased level of cyber attacks, AI usage, especially deepfakes, and well-designed disinformation campaigns. We didn't see major incidents, but it was because we were well prepared. There will be national elections, there will be elections in Germany, in some other member states, and we recently saw elections in Georgia and Moldova, which you mentioned. I would like to mention Moldova in this context, because what we saw in Moldova, this incredible combination of all those threats, cyber attacks, usage of AI, disinformation, incredible campaigning, corruption of voters, Russia using every possibility to influence the voters. So the fact that the referendum resulted with yes for the EU, and Maya Sandu, who is my hero, I really admire her very much, that she managed to win against all this intense attacking. This is a little miracle, or a big miracle. And I think that we really must not underestimate these efforts to destroy our democratic processes.
I mean, it's a very fine line, and obviously social media gives us great potential. Big tech is still a part of our lives. If we now look at the changes happening in the United States, Donald Trump will return to the White House, very much also key influence by Elon Musk, one of the major tech players. With the Digital Services Act, there are certain processes, there's probes against his company. Looking at that, and looking at the United States and Musk and Trump, what are your reactions? Is this going to work well for Europe? Is this a challenge? What's your thought on that?
The combination of Mr. Trump and Mr. Musk and what they are doing in the United States, it's not for me, it's not of my business to assess them. My job is to take care of European information space. We have the Digital Services Act, which applies to everybody, every tech company which wants to operate on our very rich and reliable market. So I think I would like to divide those two things, what's happening in the United States and what are our requests in the EU. I think that the Commission will be enforcing the Digital Services Act in line with the law. And if somebody wants to make money in Europe, he or she will have to comply with our law. But coming back to Mr. Trump becoming the 47th President of the United States, I have been asked so many times how the EU will position itself or herself. In Czech language, it's her.
Europa, yeah.
Europa. And my answer is that we have a very long tradition of strong alliance with United States. Europe and United States building prosperity, security and democracy for its people. We speak here about 800 million people. And I don't see any reason why not to continue that. Of course, it will require efforts. We already had Mr. Trump once in the White House. And the continuity of this alliance was not interrupted. So we will do ourselves everything to keep this strong alliance. We will also defend our interests of the European Union. We will want to have strong alliance based on reciprocity and mutual advantage. And I think that it makes sense both for Europe but also for United States because we have common enemies and it is always a unifying factor. I hope I will be right.
Time will tell. But also looking at your enduring legacy, with these 10 years, you've been also voted, I think, in 2019, one of the top 100 most influential people in the world. It's no easy task to step back and say, what are you most proud of? But let's ask that question. What is your enduring achievement during this time in the Commission?
It's so tempting to tell you that the red carpet in New York was the peak of my career. Connected with this moment, I only remember how heavy it was to realize that with the influence must come responsibility and really that it is something given to your hands to do something good with it. I think that I could give you a list of things which I did from GDPR through all the digital agenda which I worked on together with other commissioners, Media Freedom Act. I think I did a lot of things which will maybe cause some headache for the future autocrats of European Union, because I can imagine we might have some in the future. So, for instance, if they will want to squeeze the space for the free media, there will be Media Freedom Act, which should make it very, very difficult for them. So maybe to mention one concrete thing, it's this one.
And also, I want to bring it back to your own home region, to Czechia, to Slovakia, also to Poland, CEE region in general. I mean, in some of those areas, there's been progress, like in Poland, the change of the media landscape, once again, rule of law, but looks a bit different in terms of what's going on in Slovakia and in Hungary. What's your, let's say, message or recommendation maybe for those who will follow after you and call for citizens and media in that region?
I think that in every member state, we have a duty. When I say we, I mean the European Commission, to be again concrete. We have a duty to do everything to promote and help the countries with developing democratic system. It's true that democracy and democratic elections can produce autocratic regime. This is what we don't want. But it's fully in the hands of the citizens living in the countries. And Poland is such a nice example of it. You cannot imagine how big pressure on me was over all those years to do more in Poland against the autocratic tendencies. And I think I played always honestly with the cards I had in hands, always referring to the necessity of relying on the free vote of citizens living in Poland. And they cast their vote, and as you said, there was a change. So I don't want to sound like somebody who is giving up, but we need to have a combination of positive influence from the side of the European Union and the reaction of the citizens in each respective country. In Slovakia, of course, we watch the developments with big concern, because this is what we saw in Hungary over time, over 10 years, what Mr. Orbán was doing in Hungary, Mr. Fico seems to do in shorter time. So again, the new commission will have to continue. They will have to use the tools which we developed on these situations and be with the people. Ursula von der Leyen always says that when she's asked to, this is the quote, kick Hungary out of the EU, which is impossible. But her answer is that for her, she has several million of reasons why not to do it. She spoke about Hungarians, about the people living in the country. So I think that we have to combine things, support rule of law in the member states by respecting the rule of law principle also on European level among the EU institutions, but at the same time to really leave the free space for the voters to cast their free vote.
So still a lot of work ahead, not just for a next commissioner, but also, as you said, for the European citizens themselves as well. So
Indeed.
Democracy, rule of law, everything, important things, enduring values. Thank you so much, Jourova, for all your time here today.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
And thank you for watching. That was our interview for TVP World. Vera Jourova, Vice President here at the European Commission, at the heart of Brussels. Sasha Farbach, thank you very much.
And so this was all for now. Thank you so much for watching and have a very good night.